guys? Blue here, and I'm going to show you guys our version of the Big 5 United deck. So, last October, we dropped a Virtual World Wave to compete with our original one from a year or so ago, which was first the just the Big 5 and Noah, and last October had the Heroes, right? So, the problem was we were missing the Big 5 United and the Goes Abroad deck from that release because we weren't sure how to fully complete them because there were some issues. And a lot of you guys were asking, where they were. And we expressed some of our concerns about the decks. And some of you guys just said, you know what, go for it. Just make it up, build the deck. So we were like, all right, because we had some ideas, and I'll get to that really quickly about, how we got here. But when we got the feedback from some of you guys, it pretty much just reinforced our idea, one of the ideas we had to do this. Because originally we were looking for ways to complete the deck without making any erratas, right? We were hoping Konami could make a few of the cards, which could have handled the differences in, Mythic Dragon versus the TCG 5-headed dragon. By the way, I'll be using all three of the names throughout this video. Mythic Dragon, 5-headed dragon, 5-god dragon. So, again, it was a ritual in the anime, at least in the first series. It's a fusion later in GX when they start playing by the rules. So it's a ritual, has a ritual spell. It needs one monster of each of the 5 attributes that it is immune to in its own effect. Ours is a fusion of 5 dragons, and we were hoping to get a card that could just make everything in the graveyard, or the dragons. DNA Surgery works on the field, and I believe it was Rebirth Judgment in GX was a trap card that was a graveyard version of DNA Surgery. That could have worked too. So the problem was there wasn't a clean way to do it. We were kind of debating on errata. Some of you guys just said, "Why not errata?" And we said, "You know what? Sure, if it makes the deck complete, why not?" So I'm going to start off with the Fusion deck this time because that's where the errata lies. So the rest of the deck is unchanged, minus 1 card, which was a previous errata. So 5-headed dragon, Mythic Dragon, 5-god dragon, whatever it is, it goes by all those names in the various mediums. Was always the Big Five's thing from the initial very brief Virtual World story arc after Duel's Kingdom to the more fully fledged arc in the middle of Battle City. And again, the problem was it needs 5 dragons, and their deck has like 0 dragons. So, and instead of rigging up some whole kind of making it a ritual, making up a ritual fact, we just changed the errata that gets the same thing across. It does exactly what it does in the anime, but the effect is worded differently. Essentially, we replace the 5 dragons with, by name, each of the Big Five's deck masters. Because that's how it worked in the anime. The difference is Nightmare Penguin was a wind attribute, not a water attribute, so they had 5 attributes among their 5 deck masters. And we don't really feel like changing Nightmare Penguin and then making it the 5 attributes. So we rounded out to the way we play it, the way we'll always play this card in the original anime. So considering it's in Zane's Cyberdark deck, extra deck, we now have 2 versions of the same card to be played appropriately among each of those 2 series. So it's kind of confusing because, we have it all in one channel, but they had 2 different ways in 2 different series. So that's how we're splitting it. So if you see it with the white errata, is obviously the Big 5 version of it from the Virtual World first series. No sticker, so it's the non-errata version. You guys get it. So basically, its fusion material pieces are each of the Big Five's deck masters by name. So it's not any attribute, so you can't substitute them for anything else they had, like, Hysteric Fairy or Legendary Fisherman, which would fulfill the attribute requirement, but we're not what they use. They use their deck masters specifically, so we're rolling with that. And that's really the biggest thing. The rest of the deck is just made up of cards that they use independently and reuse in their Big 5 deck, or cards that they did use new in that duel. And this deck contains no deck master effects. unlike each of their individual decks. So it's 2 Judgments, 2 Robotic Knights. Almost the entire deck is in duplicate, which we like because it gives a nice harmonious feel to the deck. Because even though there's 2 of everything, it's a roughly 1-to-1 ratio then of every card. And again, it's not a bad consistency there. 1 copy of Berserk Dragon. So this was their backup boss. When 5-headed dragon fell, they replaced Mythic Dragon with Berserk Dragon. So we saw that, you know, even though they lost 5-god dragon, they were not out of the game. And also because of the way their Deckmaster things worked, this became a Deckmaster. 2 Catapult Turtle. This is something you saw in the Big 5 United Duel, which was played by Crump. We hadn't seen it in his own independent duel. 2 Deep Sea Warrior. So again, making the third of all the Deckmasters. Hysteric Fairy, coming back from previous duels, as well as Injection Fairy Lily, although unlike Lecter's deck, which regains life points, this deck has a hard time doing that, so Lily is less viable in this deck, and one of those things where you really have to make judgment calls with it. Speaking of Lecter, Jinzo. So, yeah, and 2 Jinzos is pretty good because A, has pretty fair attack points, and the whole trap negation thing, but that does not make this deck at all, you know, unbeatable. Although this deck is definitely, I think, better than a lot of decks we have, because it was played and used in a 2 versus 1, and we also built it with that in mind, because since it was meant to be used in 2 versus 1, we made sure to give the deck a nice edge to it, so that in a 2 versus 1, it could stand a fair shot. So, again, rolling through with Machine King. 1 copy of Magician of Faith, because it's Magician of Faith. And the last one is Nightmare Penguin. Again, the attribute's different for us versus the anime, and we just completely decided to neglect that because we felt it wasn't that necessary, especially now with the way we made 5-headed dragon. The last monster is 2, the Legendary Fisherman. So, a card we've only otherwise seen played by Mako. Again, not that's really that relevant, but it's, you know, hey, same card, different decks, see who plays it. So, spell cards start off with 2, a deal with Dark Ruler. There's 2 to 1 Berserk for the help in the consistency of getting this card out, because it will search from your deck, of course. But we don't want to have multiple Berserks, because the idea was that they had 1 5-headed dragon, and it was replaced with 1 Berserk Dragon. And a lot of times, if we're really stretching for cards, we'll put in multiple of some characters of their larger bosses. But this was a case we definitely felt we didn't need to. They have plenty of monsters. Again, the only problem was just getting the 5-headed dragon dynamic to work. So, 2 with Dark Ruler, 1 Berserk Dragon. We feel that it plays out overall very nicely and comfortably. 2 of a Legendary Ocean, a card we've previously had errated. And the only change is that it doesn't really conflict with Umi as far as card quantity. Because its effect basically changed its name within the deck. So it's like the Cyber Harpy ladies. It's just changed to allow us to have more copies of cards to fill characters' decks and make them more consistent. Ignoring the whole name thing. 2 Different Dimension Capsule was not a card played by them, but it replaces the card they did have, which was designed to search out what they needed to make the ritual for 5-headed dragon. So we're replacing a specified search card with a more generic search card, which kind of ends up being used in the end for the same purposes of making 5-god dragon. And speaking of making Mythic Dragon, the next card is the missing piece of the puzzle. Dragon's Mirror, a card that we really liked, and some of you even suggested too, that you just need to banish from your graveyard or your field the monsters listed on Dragon type fusion. They don't have to be dragons, just on the fusion. So by changing 5-headed dragon to what we have it as, now this card can just scoop out all the big 5 deck masters. So that's it. We get to change just the 5-headed dragon card, and the rest of the deck just kind of does what it's meant to. So we really like, again, we really like Dragon's Mirror. It's kind of the card we were hoping to be able to use if we could just change like the graveyard attribute. But again, we just errata it and solved the problem. You know, it was a suggestion from a lot of you guys. So since you guys were kind of saying the thing that we were thinking of doing, that's why we just decided to go with it. Although you can let us know in the comments of this video, you know, where you guys stand with it. Although it's not going to change. We have this deck now. It's out. So we know we tried to avoid erratas to stuff that's been drastically changed that kind of, you know, affects a card's performance, like card safety being the key one. But changing 5-head dragon was something we thought we would do to essentially have this deck. The deck was ready to go otherwise, completely otherwise. It was a fine deck ready to go. It had this one flaw. So next up, Heavy Storm. A popular card in the virtual world, either in or outside of duels. It was used quite a few times, and it's always a great card, of course, and never a card we're going to play it more than one. Especially when they have Magician of Faith. Monster Reborn, and 2 Pot of Greeds, because they did use them, but doubling Pot of Greed we felt helped the deck flow a little bit better. Again, especially because this deck was built with a 2 versus 1 in mind, so we want to make sure that, you know, unlike Nesbitt's original deck where we modified it for a 3 versus 1, we wanted this deck to kind of just be able to take on, as it was originally designed, 2 versus 1. Premature Burial. Alright, and pretty much from this point on, the cards are just kind of a wash. So, 2 Savage Blessing, Pulled from Lector. Not something that has a lot of playability, because it only works on direct attacks. Spring of Rebirth, nearly dead. Only made playable in this deck by Nightmare Penguin. And then finishing up with Driving Snow, which protects your trap cards, which is really just Gravity Bind, which is the card you never want to play because it locks down everybody. So, again, the trap lineup is super weak, and those last couple spells are also kind of weak. But overall, the deck has a really good assortment of strong monsters, you know, hard-hitting spells, and then again, the Mythic Dragon can turn to Berserk Dragon. Again, you saw the duel we did, that Mythic Dragon puts in some serious work. So this is it for our Big 5 United deck. Again, really happy we finally got a build. It just really came down to us making that, you know, errata to get the whole thing to go. And yeah. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more awesome anime content. See you guys.